here's my question. Would you rather teach in the time that you went to school or teach now?
I really like teaching now. I think
I do too.
yes. All right. Podcast over.
Yeah. Is it just that it just are you just looking for validation? Whatever.
um, I don't know. I first of all, I think I'm really good at existing and communicating in the space that I'm in right now, and
Hmm.
like going to difficult places scares me, which is why I
Yeah.
don't go outside or go on dates. I okay. I just feel like first of all, my teachers didn't really understand me, and I feel like I'm able to have a foot on the culture so that I can understand my students a little bit better right now.
Hmm.
It just felt like adults and or like yeah, adults and kids were just like two separate worlds, and like I try my best to show my kids that we exist together. Like you are not, I'm not more valuable than you. You're not more valuable than me. Like we are, like we're both in this situation now. Like where authority comes in and like my position as a teacher and discipline, all that is complex and it's like a conversation for another time, I guess. But I feel like now I can, you know, be a little bit more connected with them in a way that really matters. I don't know. I think.
I think that makes a difference. I remember distinctly being in fourth grade in my music class, and we had a student teacher in there, and we were supposed to talk about the music we were really into. Now, keep in mind, this would be 1994, and we were right outside of Seattle. So we all just said we loved grunge, right? It's Nirvana. Nirvana's the bet. Like, it always has been. We're all just the biggest Nirvana. None of us had even heard a full album, right? But like our brothers listened to it, so it was like Nirvana. And I remember that music teacher putting on a Tears for Fears album. Like that was the thing, and we laughed at it and we made fun of it, and it was like that wasn't really even all that much beforehand, right? But like there was no exposure to anything except what was current unless your parents happened to play it. You weren't going to like
Mm.
just run into these other things, and so we just like clowned on it. Whereas I look at some of the music that even my seventh grader listens to, and it's like, where did you hear Taking Back Sunday? Like
Mm.
where did this even come from? How do you have all like how do you have Dear Maria, Count Me In? Like how are you knowing this? That is those are that's 20 years old. Like that's amazing. And they're into it because it's not like, oh, this is old. Like they don't know what Pepper didn't know when Taking Back Sunday existed. It was just cool because you don't know every current thing.
Yeah. So
So
so where's that put you? You said you would rather teach today.
I would way rather teach now. But
Okay.
I'm looking at it from a different spot. Like the education that I received, elementary, I remember all of my teachers' names. I remember where I sat. Like I remember all of those things.
Mm.
I could go from kindergarten through sixth grade and tell you the names of my teachers and like what I could draw a map of the building and tell you where I was at. That was excellent. But I also then remember my education being a pure assessment of if I had memorized stuff. And that
Mm.
was there it was not skills based. There was not me learning how to my wife and I talk about that because we went to high school together. Like our education was bad. It was it was it was not great. And so when I see then people on the internet my age talking about like we don't do it how we used to, like thank fucking God. Are you kidding? It was horrible. What do you guys remember? Because it was awful. And so much so that I don't there's a real like strong empowerment currently of like people that just graduated high school and were like, I'm done learning. And so we're so like this is that's where the learning stopped. And so now I'm just gonna that's the cap of what I know. And I don't think that the kids that we are graduating out into the world are under any kind of presumption that I don't think they think about learning, but they're not done. I think they are continuing to learn and change and evolve. Whereas I think high school was kind of or even college, but like that was like the end that, well, I'm done learning now. I've got it. And so you want to change stuff? God, kids these days. So I would way rather teach now because I
Yeah.
think teaching then was so easy to be bad at. Like to just make no I think there was just such a space to make no real I even look if you want a testament to it, go look at old AP tests and what used to be on them. AP Lang test, which is the class I teach that I believe in that I love so much. You go and look at the old AP tests or even the old SATs, their vocabulary. You
Oh
had to have
yeah.
studied
Mhm.
you had to have studied the words to be able to answer them. And if you had not studied the words, they couldn't assess your skills because they were assessing if you'd studied for that thing specifically, right? AP tests, you used to have to know the names of like do you know the difference between a polysyndeton and an asyndeton? Do you? How about epistrophe versus anaphora? Do you know? Are you up on that? Like, of course you don't. But if you could there was parallel structure occurring and every one of these sentences was starting with the same word for a reason, then you would know that what that was. Like,
Right.
man, there's a bunch of commas in here. I don't need to know that that's a syndeton, right? Like, that's the choice because we're teaching the skill and not the name of the skill. That's way fucking better.
You just made me feel like a dumbass.
Why? Whatever. We had the same answer.
I know, but the words the multisyllabic words you just used, and I was like, okay, some of these are sounding familiar. I just teach middle schools. I haven't gone over them in so long.
But you know who else doesn't know those words? My students. I don't teach those. Do
Fair.
I do I know them? I 100% know them. I could teach you the name of it. Like if you want to know those things, I can teach you though. If you are looking for a word to use, if you ask me, like they're doing this thing where the same phrase is used at the beginning of these sentences. Like, yeah, I no, there's a word for that. That's called anaphora. Like we have that's the word for that if you want to know it. So you could say the choice of the anaphoric beginning, and then like if you want the word, I'll give it to you. But you don't need to know that to demonstrate that you recognize the choice and its intent. And I like that part of what I do versus trying to teach them that to see if they know the word.
Yeah.
That's dumb. But that was my education. That was what the focus was for me.
Yeah, I feel like I was kind of on the edge of that, like in elementary school, and like there might have be a little bit of a distillation or misremembering of my elementary school experience because it was elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
But and because like elementary school is built to be real, like whatever your impression of it rote. It's like you're supposed
Yeah,
to remember
it
these
should be.
specific. Yeah, like kids are thinking in concrete terms, and then as you go to middle school, high school, it starts becoming more
Yeah,
expressive and like different ways of meeting standards.
I didn't know what education looked like in elementary school, right? And until my kids were in it, is what I'm saying. And I
Mm.
was so pumped when they had to do times tests, right? Like because that was an express like you having those things memorized makes your life measurably easier. That is useful every single day of your life. Like that sort of thing that is where memorization, hell yeah. And if it's an assessment, okay, great. But like they were always allowed to retake them and they do them a whole bunch it was just like a thing they would almost do every day. And it
Right.
was like I remember doing that. And I think that is a unless multiplication changes, knowing what those things are off the top of your head makes your life easier and therefore is a valuable skill. Do you think so? I'm talking about the education though. What about the behavior? Like are kids rowdier at this point than you think they were when you were in that classroom?
I, you know, I I've thought about this before, and I think I might have mentioned it before. It's like I think I was in the gifted and talented kids class, and I never saw problem behaviors, so I have that bias in my experience. There might have been like some crazy ADHD kids running around and whatnot and causing mischief and mayhem. Uh, I mean, I don't feel like I heard about threats
Hmm.
on schools as much, which
Sure.
I feel like has increased. I don't know the data behind it, but we're two guys with a microphone, so we can make
Right.
informed opinions or uninformed opinions.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think especially in that way that there's been a behavioral shift, and maybe it's access to media, maybe it's uh, overstimulation or undiagnosed this or that or the other. I think behaviors have changed since we were kids, and maybe that is like a oh no, I don't like that face you're making. It makes me feel like a
No,
dumbass
I agree
again.
with you. I stop. Why? Since when am I the fucking like the sage on the stage? Like I'm just thinking because again, like you're talking about a time period and I'm talking about a different one. And so like we're not, you know what? Like you have yours and I have my. These are different by like a good chunk of time. Like, what year did you graduate?
2014,
Okay, you started school when I finished it.
like
So
college or no? Wait.
I graduated high school in '02.
Oh, oh.
Right. So we're talking about a completely different experience. From fourth grade on, I could have been your teacher.
That's
I started
bizarre.
teaching in '06.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the party. You're telling me I started year 20 in the
how
fall.
how was it with race to no? What no kid left behind?
Um, I look here. So here's this is the point that I was gonna kind of make is like when we talk about behaviors, right? I think a huge shift, and I'm not exactly sure when this happened, but there's a huge shift from when I was young to now, and it obviously happened a while ago, where like there was no once, especially you hit like junior high, there was no expectation that your teacher was gonna be entertaining that they were expected to engage you. They were assigning work and the expectation was that you did it. And if
Mm,
you didn't do it, then you failed. and like and it wasn't like this world of interventions that was going on in the late 90s and early 2000s. I went to school with kids that didn't pass their classes and did not graduate. That was that, right? And so there was no incentive for a teacher necessarily to be interesting aside from their own interest in their job being fun in that reason. Like I of course I had engaging teachers and people and like those things definitely occurred, but I don't think that was part of the job description.
hmm.
You didn't that just wasn't a factor in it. These classes could be boring as hell. Here's the book, here's the textbook, here are the questions you're going to answer out of it. And so just you're doing that because that is what this class is. And then that was it. And those people had been teaching for a very, very long time. Might still be teaching now for all I know. And so there was that. And then there's now where like if a kid's not engaged, there's a conversation that happens there and that's a different world to be in. So
That's a
when we
whole
talk about
different
getting
approach.
rowdy,
Yeah.
right? So like being rowdy and disrespectful is now a symptom of an issue instead of what used to maybe just be like being boisterous, right? But like now it's being caused by something, so we have to get to the root of that and then put in these interventions in place. I'm not saying that's necessarily for the worse,
Right.
but I don't know. Again, I was only a student then. I wasn't teaching these classes. It was me and my friends. And so like maybe it was happening. I don't think that education in the year 2000 resembled 2025 in the idea of like, well, if they're not interested, what's going on?
Yeah. What are you doing wrong? Yeah.
Or what are they doing? I don't
Yeah.
it just wasn't there.
Hmm.
I don't know. You failed. You went to summer school. That was that. It's like, man, I don't. That's not really putting a whole lot of accountability on an educator. I'm not saying it's always their fault, but like, well, you failed. Well, their class is hard.
Also, where
Well,
like this is where did teachers back then get their resources from? Like
the
their
textbook,
oh,
the
they would just
textbook.
be they would just order a textbook. I feel so dumb
Oh
for
my god.
asking this.
No, you shouldn't because you weren't there. You have no reason to know that. No. So in every class on the first day, you got assigned a textbook and you wrote your name inside of it, and that was your book, and you always had to have it. And so you put all of those things in your locker, and then if you had homework, you had to take those textbooks home so that you could do the work, because it's, unless, even if you had a handout, where are you going to get the information from, right? So you had those textbooks, and then you had to go home and you had to do those questions out of that textbook. And like that was the material. Now, was that necessarily curriculum, like you have to do this? What else was there to do?
Yeah. Huh.
like where were they going to go in 1990? Where were you going to go? You're going to make copies of the encyclopedia because you could go grab the world books. Where are all the world books? Oh, they're at Mikey's house. So what are we going to use? Like it was it was like that. And so you yeah, that was the material. And so I think teachers were definitely limited by that also. You couldn't just go find stuff and do it. It was different.
That's bizarre. That's so bizarre to think about with all the things that I individually make and all the teachers I know on here online that individually make so many materials now. It's just so bizarre thinking of teaching being out of like a singular textbook
Or
that's
the books that you had available to you in the library or the book room,
right,
right?
right. And I guess yeah, I never really thought about how having class sets of books of like novels or whatever was so valuable. It's like that's your whole that's your whole
And
thing.
so in defense of the kids these days, because I will always just ride or die there, like the reason that they might get rowdy and disrespectful is because their general education experience, they recognize the potential for it to be interesting.
Huh.
And so like when it's not, then it's like, well, then what are we doing here? Because this, I know that this doesn't have to be terrible, and I know that people will pay attention to me, and so you're not, and it's not of interest, then I'm out. And that doesn't mean the teachers are necessarily bad, but like if they don't find you specifically interesting, they recognize they found somebody else interesting, and so now we have an issue. Like the standard, they have higher standards
Yeah.
because it's better now.
Which is why teachers deserve a higher pay.